you will never be shallow enough. No matter how hard you try to be shallow and tell yourself that you only care about a pretty face and you only care about money and you only care about having great sex, you don't. You care about all kinds of things. You care about your own dignity, your own pride, your own sense of leading a meaningful life, your objectives to make the world a better place, even if you think you don't. If you support me on Patreon, you will know that I'm actually very much open to suggestions for video topics, that I answer questions that come in from my fans. Sometimes I get a single line comment from one of my supporters and it becomes a 40-minute video. And I just asked my girlfriend, is there anything on your mind? Girlfriend's just sitting with me off camera here. Is there anything on your mind you'd want me to make a video about? And she pointed out astutely that I have made many, many videos warning about the dangers in open relationships, in so-called polyamory. I have a lot of videos about this that has this kind of cautionary, if not castigating tone when talking about open relationships. So much so that I have viewers who watch the channel for years who are then shocked to find out that I'm in an open relationship and that I'm in favor of open relationships generally. I've had several people who watched the channel for years didn't know that. And I was like, oh, like, did you not read like the description below that video and stuff? Because it's stated really bluntly. But I mean, this is kind of a recurring motif for me in many ways because like, I talk about a vegan diet and vegan activism, but a lot of what I'm saying is really cautionary. It's really getting to the moral of the story and like, here's what you have to be worried about. I don't do uncritical cheerleading for ecological activism, for vegan activism, for animal rights, even on issues like war and peace. You know, we talk about foreign policy. So, I mean, we've just gone through this whole epoch of, you know, the war in Syria. At no point was I simply cheerleading for one side or another. I wasn't just saying war, or just saying peace, or just saying intervention, or just saying I'm against it. It's there's this sort of cautionary tone to everything I say about these things, and I'd like to think a sort of analytical tone. Now, look, guys, it may be that I'd have more YouTube viewers if I had this kind of cheerleading quality in my videos. But I actually do not make my content for the stupidest 60% of the audience. I don't want to cater to those people. I don't want to cater to the people who just, you know, are here on the internet looking for excuses for their own bad behavior or looking to, you know, who are looking for cheerleaders. Maybe we can leave it at that. So on the other hand, I think there's an interesting sort of hypocrisy in what's going on right now with the criticism of Onision. Right? Where, as the internet is wont to do, people have simply taken it too far. There's really no point in criticizing Onision and his, you know, failure of an open relationship, the, you know, bizarre and morally disturbing elements of his open relationship. There's no point criticizing it if you actually think the guy is a monster. There's a point in criticizing it if you look at this guy and think, wow, he is human, all too human, and there's something for all of us to learn in the analysis of where he went wrong, right? But as my girlfriend said, and suggested in the title of this video, she said, well, you really haven't said a whole lot about how open relationships can go right. What can be positive about them? What can be good about them? And by the way, my marriage to my first wife was indeed an open relationship. For better, and to be honest, I was about to say for better or for worse. I can't even say it, just for better, period. It was just, that was a completely positive aspect of that relationship, in my opinion, looking back on it now. So I do at least have the experience of making that open relationship work, and I have the experience of making this open relationship work. So it's not merely abstract and philosophical from my perspective. What do I think Onision is doing wrong most fundamentally and most generally? Well, okay, there are two aspects to that. This video is supposed to be positive rather than negative. You know, one is, I think this guy, he's really just utterly lacks the humility and maturity to love anyone and to communicate things in terms of love. And that shows most of all in the aftermath when these relationships end. Almost every time. And it doesn't matter about the age of the woman. Some of these women were older. He had relationships with women who were over 20 and so on. And the minute the relationship ends, he's coming on YouTube and denouncing these people and hating them and defaming them. Really serious defamation. really blackening their characters, saying they're a terrible person, saying they have terrible hygiene, so on and so forth. And it's like, bro, you really loved this woman, okay? And he'll admit that himself. He breaks down weeping and says that also. He also says that he was in love with these people and so on. And dude, take her with all of her positive qualities and her negative qualities. You chose her. You fell in love with her. It's on you. So there is just no room for this blackening and defamation of character. Now, that's a symptom of the problem with Onision. That's a symptom of his immaturity, of how self-centered he is, how short-term his thinking is, of how I think you can say genuinely exploitative he is in relation to other people, meaning that he just wants to use them for his own gratification. And then as soon as he discards them, he's like a very small child throwing away a toy with contempt that no longer amuses him. It's a very disturbing, side of his character. But again, I'm here discussing this not to just condemn him or something, not to call him a monster, but that's kind of what can we learn from this. So another kind of subtly disturbing element of this is when he speaks positively of these women, which is rare. It's mostly denunciation and defamation that you get from the guy. But when he speaks positively of them, what does he have to say? What's positive? And you find him saying things like, when he first met Billy, what he really appreciated about her was that they played video games together. They played Earth Defense Force together, and he has really positive memories of that. And, he hadn't played Earth Defense Force with anyone else, and his wife, now husband, really wasn't into that particular video game. So he really appreciated the time he spent playing Earth Defense Force with this girl. In other cases, it's very clear that he had nothing in common with these women. Absolutely nothing. They were simply a girl with a pretty face on the internet. There was absolutely nothing else in common there. Now, I want to be clear. It's not illegal. It's not illegal to be shallow. And there's never going to be a law in any culture, anywhere in the world, saying that you can't be shallow. I can't even think of writing a science fiction novel about a parallel universe where the government decides to make it. There are some people, both men and women, straight and gay, all they care about is a pretty face. And you know what? My role in this video is to tell you that you really ought to care about more than a pretty face. You really ought to care about more than physical beauty. And I think that is the most fundamental, profound, and important thing to making an open relationship work, because it's the same thing that makes a closed relationship work, right? So you guys know this. My girlfriend is now 27 years old, and I'm 41, all right? It's a huge age gap. Why was it worth doing? Why was it worth taking the risk? Why was it worth struggling to make the relationship work for years? I'll be blunt with you. It's been damaging for me. I would really say I have endured a lot of psychological damage in this relationship. I really have. Topic for another video, okay? I've had a lot of sorrow and a lot of agony and a lot of damage. What was justification? It can never be justified by a pretty face, right? You're never going to endure misery for others and self-sacrifice and do things to help them and do things to educate them and do things to help them, whatever it is. You're never going to endure all of the bad things in a relationship, and you're never going to commit yourself to working hard to help others and do from your part the kind of self-sacrifice and good things. You are never going to do that for a pretty face. A pretty face is never going to be enough. And a guy like Onision, totally thoughtlessly, like he's not thinking about the consequences of his action, he kind of demonstrates that. He kind of proves that point in a weird way, right? Because with all these women, he wants sex with them. He also wants to kind of exploit them as his live-in babysitter, which is another really dark element of it, that they move in and take care of his kids and sit in his couch and play video games. But that is it. He's not in any way giving and positive and supporting and loving. There is nothing else to it. He's not capable of anything else, because that's all he values about them. That's all the common ground they've got. Now, my perspective is it's his fault because he chose them. And I said that now years ago with Billy. It's like, look, dude, it doesn't matter that she has a history as a drug user, because you chose her. You knew that about her, and you chose her. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter that she was, I think, a high school dropout. There's sort of this litany of moral faults, moral and intellectual faults. You know, she's stupid and everything. Yeah. You chose her. You committed to love her and support her and build a life with her and stuff. So it's on you. You knew all this bad stuff. Now you're throwing it back in her face. Again, it's like this child throwing a tantrum and throwing away a toy. This toy isn't fun anymore. I don't want it. Or even being mad at the toy for failing to amuse you. This very shallow, very split. Okay. Why endure all this suffering and misery with Melissa? It's because we really have meaningful common ground. Okay? We have things in common that aren't just personal traits. They're not just adjectives that describe us. They're actually ambitions. We're looking forward to the future, the type of work we want to do, the type of difference we want to make in the world. Okay? So again, one example, just being brief here, one obvious example is veganism, right? Being vegan isn't just an adjective. It doesn't just describe me. It doesn't just describe my diet, right? It's tied to a whole lot of concerns and feelings and sensitivities, and it's also tied to positive aspirations. When you look to the future, what I want to do, what kind of world I want to live in, what kind of impact I would say. There are many, many others. You guys probably know I'm almost obsessive about the history of genocide, slavery, colonialism, the way Canada, the United States, Australia, these types of countries were really created by genocide. Last night I was talking on the phone about that for about an hour with a friend. It comes up all the time. You know, it really is something very important in my life. My girlfriend also shares that, okay? That's not just the way we view history. It's also the way we view the present and our role in this culture and the way we look at the future. It shapes who we are. This is meaningful common ground, okay? You will stay together and you will work together and you'll have a meaningful relationship because you have those things in common. The prettiest face imaginable is never going to be pretty enough. It's never going to justify any of that, okay? Just to give, this is a random comparison, but it's true. I would say the same thing about money, okay? Whether it's a woman who's with a man for his money or a man with a woman, the money will never be enough. It will never fulfill you. It will never compensate you for the denigration you go through in a relationship, the sense of humiliation and upset and heartbreak and psychological, all the things you endure, right? You can't say, oh, well, but he's got money or but she's got money. The money will never compensate you for that. It will never be enough, right? And I would take a further step. If you guys watch the channel, you know I have an extremely good sex life. Even so, the sex will never be enough. Sex alone, the best sex imaginable, the best sex possible on planet Earth, it's both that the sex will never be meaningful enough, and you know what I mean this, you will never be shallow enough. No matter how hard you try to be shallow and tell yourself that you only care about a pretty face and you only care about money and you only care about having great sex, you don't. You care about all kinds of things. You care about your own dignity, your own pride, your own sense of leading a meaningful life, your objectives to make the world a better place, even if you think you don't. I mean, trust guys who just spend their whole lives playing football and stuff. All of those guys have some kind of sense of moral purpose and mission in their lives that's integral to their own sense of dignity. You know, they have their own cultural, social, religious, political values that make them who they are. Those values may not be challenged often enough for them to really come out and voice them, explain that to you. But sure, so I just say everyone has their own sense of dignity and so on, and that's going to get trampled on in a relationship. It's going to get challenged. It's going to get impinged upon, okay? And when you're talking about an open relationship, then it's going to get challenged and impinged upon from multiple directions at the same time. You're going to be dealing with stresses and bruised egos and unexpected, you're going to be dealing with heartbreak on at least a triangular basis instead of just a two-sided basis of the equation. And again, we can learn from Onisian's example. Someone who's very naive might look and say, oh, well, okay, right. One guy, two girls. They're all busy taking care of the kids. They got a good income from YouTube. What's the problem? What indeed is the problem? The problem is not that Onision is a monster. The problem is that he is human, all too human, and you get to see the tragedy of human nature play out in these relationships, okay? So my positive message about having a great sex life, whether it's an open relationship sex life or it's a closed relationship monogamous sex life, really comes down to the idea that when you're pursuing sexual gratification, your top priority should not be sexual gratification. Does that sound surreal? I don't think it is at all. I think, you should be someone going to a conference of other people who study ancient Greek philosophy saying, wow, I want to meet people who really have something in common with me, whether something to do with ancient Greek philosophy in this case, right? Maybe they're going to be male and maybe they're going to be female, and maybe we're going to be just friends, and maybe we're going to fall in love, and maybe, you say, hey, look, this is my interest, this is my aspiration, this is my ambition in life, and I want to meet people who share these values or share these ambitions or share this outlook, and maybe some of them are going to sleep with me, and some of them might be a one-night stand, and then later you become just friends, or some of them might be just friends, and 10 years from now you have sex. It's like, hey, this is what I care about in life. This is who I am, and I want to meet people who really overlap with that in a meaningful way. And you know what? Then your memories of them will not be of sitting on the couch playing video games. Even if you've played video games, that won't be the meaningful thing in your interaction. You'll have all this substantive, meaningful stuff that drew you together, that keep you together, that are the basis for the friendship, the basis for the sexual relationship, right? And any relationship you enter into, whether it be open or closed, is a judgment you're passing on yourself. Okay? I once challenged a friend of mine, this is years ago, and the guy was older than me, but he was a lot less on game when it came to relationships. And I challenged him. I said to him, in your mind, what is the difference between being with a good woman and a bad woman, a woman who is not? What does it mean to you? All right? I was challenging him because it's like, look, this really isn't about sex. If it were about sex, you would be willing to sleep with any prostitute you find attractive, any stripper, anyone. Again, this is relative to what he thinks is bad. Any woman you judge to be bad. That guy, he hated everyone who had tattoos. It was just a personal thing for him. Anyone with tattoos, he just thought was an idiot, and you could never be with a woman with tattoos. You wouldn't care if a woman had tattoos, whatever. All these things that make someone bad. Hey, let's go to another extreme. If it was about sex, you'd be willing to sleep with someone who's an Orthodox Muslim, Orthodox Christian, someone who has totally different religious and moral views from you that are incompatible with you, right? If it's about sex, then it's just about sex. It's not, right? The reason why you want to sleep with a good woman, as you think of it, is because who you sleep with is about who you really are. It's passing a judgment on you, okay? And this is shallow and it's deep at the same time. Back when I was really deep into studying history of the Vietnam War, but especially in Laos and Cambodia, I remember admitting to a friend of mine, I met an attractive American woman, white American woman, doesn't matter. And, she was interested in trying to see if Lego would fit into Duplo, if you know what I mean. And I said to this friend of mine at the time, I was reading all this stuff about crimes against humanity committed by the American Army and stuff. I was so deep into this stuff. I was like, you know what? I really don't know if I can be in a relationship with an American like this. I really would feel embarrassed, living here in Laos, living with the bomb craters, living and going. Every day I walk past the special hospital for people who have one leg because the Americans blew off their leg. I was really, living with this. It's like, I just don't know if I could be in a relationship. It's the same thing. Why do you want to be with a good woman? Okay? Because it's judgment on me, right? It's who I am. If I'm walking around holding her arm, arm in arm. Yeah, this is my girlfriend. She's American. Her father is in the U.S. Marine Corps. Her brother is fighting in Iraq right now. And she's, let's just say hypothetically, she's Republican and pro-army and pro-bombing Laos or whatever, If that's my lady, it's a judgment on me, right? Our ideas of good and bad and so on, pervade this whole experience of sexuality, all right? So yeah, I guess fundamentally you could say I'm a kind of optimist, precisely because I believe sex is never only about sex, all right? It's always and inevitably about your moral values, your highest aspiration, the positive impact you want to make in the world. And for that reason, I think everyone can have a really meaningful sex life, even if you're ugly, or even if the people in your open relationship are ugly too, right? living in a world dominated by Instagram and glossy magazines and movies and so on, it may seem to you that having a pretty face is the most important thing in the world, but it's not. What's really important is having a meaningful connection with people, so that when you're sitting on the couch, you're doing something more meaningful than just playing video games. Or even if you do play video games once in a while, there's that depth and gravitas of the common ground you have, your common aspirations, the way you look at the world. All right? You get to choose who you want to be, and you get to choose who you want to be with. And inevitably, those people you share your life with, intimately, sexually, profoundly, all right, they hold up a mirror in which you see yourself, and they offer a constant sense of analysis, criticism, an outside objective opinion, and an outside subjective opinion on what it is you're doing with your life and what you're doing wrong, right? You sleep with your own harshest critics, okay? The people who know what you're doing, they know whether or not you failed that test because you didn't do your homework in a way that your professors never will. They know your motivations, and they know the outcomes of your efforts. That's who you sleep with, whether you're in an open relationship or a closed relationship. So you have to get to grips with the more profound motivations that are always at work beneath the surface of your sexuality. Because human sexuality, in terms of how we've evolved and how we live in the society today, it has never resembled clicking on a Twitter profile. It's never resembled clicking on an Instagram profile or clicking through a Tinder, Tumblr, or any of these dating things, all right? Human relationships are about looking into someone else's eyes and knowing that they do not see you the way that you see yourself.